Flint, Michigan was a city shaped by industry, where hardworking people built their lives around factories, family, and faith. Bruce Miller was one of them, a dedicated businessman who ran his own scrap metal yard in Genesee County. He was a man of routine, known for his kindness and quiet determination, working long hours to provide for his wife, Sherry, and their family. To outsiders, the Millers seemed like any other blue-collar couple, navigating the ups and downs of life in a struggling economy. But beneath the surface, a deadly secret was taking shape, one that would turn Bruce's life into a tragic headline. Today, I will tell you about what is likely the first murder orchestrated through the internet. While awareness of such dangers has significantly increased since then, cases like this still happen. It's important to learn these stories, to understand the risks, and to recognize warning signs. If you want to know the full story of Bruce and Sherry Miller, stay with me. It was the late 1990s. Bruce Miller, a 46-year-old, twice-divorced man, had a deep passion for car racing. That passion led him to open his own scrapyard, where he dealt in automotive parts. At the same time, he eagerly looked forward to retirement. To manage the bookkeeping for his new business, he hired Sherry, a woman 20 years his junior. She was cheerful, always smiling, and full of life. Outside of work, Sherry supplemented her income by selling Mary Kay cosmetics, working under the MLM model. It didn't take long for sparks to fly between Bruce and Sherry. Their professional relationship turned into a passionate affair, leading Bruce to leave his wife. In April 1999, he and Sherry made their relationship official, sealing their union in marriage. Both had children from previous relationships and were excited that everyone would be able to form one happy family. Yet their happiness was not meant to last long. On November 8, 1999, just 7 months after their wedding, they faced an unimaginable tragedy. Bruce was shot in the chest by an unknown assailant. When his brother and wife found him, it was already too late. The man had died from a gunshot wound while standing behind the counter at his scrapyard. At first, it appeared to be a typical robbery, driven by a desire for money. Bruce usually carried $2,000 in cash to pay for car parts. When his body was found, both the money and his wallet were missing. Sherry had a solid alibi for the time of her husband's murder. During her first conversation with the police, she suggested that she had her own theory about who might be responsible. The only known enemy of her husband was their former colleague, John Hutchinson. Sherry had been involved with John before marrying Bruce. Despite John changing jobs, tensions remained between the two men. The relationship with Sherry wasn't the only point of contention. Apparently, John had borrowed money from Bruce and delayed repaying it. There was also an ongoing investigation into car thefts that had occurred at Bruce's scrapyard, with John being the primary suspect. It's likely that Bruce had pointed the police in John's direction. Revenge could have been the motive for the crime. John was interrogated and subjected to a polygraph test, which he failed. While this wasn't definitive proof of his guilt, as lie detectors are not infallible, it gave the police grounds to consider him the main suspect and search for stronger evidence against him. This would soon become irrelevant as the case took an unexpected turn. It was revealed that a few months after her marriage to Bruce, Sherry met 39-year-old Jerry Cassaday online. This was during the early days of the internet, when one of the first and most recognizable internet service providers was AOL, America Online. It was through AOL's chat service that Sherry and Jerry began corresponding. Jerry was from Kansas City, Missouri. Born in 1960, he grew up with 3 older brothers. He was a quiet young man who enjoyed fishing trips. After finishing school, he decided to become a police officer. In his career, he met his future wife, Barbara, who worked in the same department. Together, they raised 2 children from Barbara's previous relationship and later had a child of their own. Over the years, Jerry's career in the police force flourished. He was promoted to lieutenant and eventually worked as a detective in the homicide department. But his promising career came to an abrupt halt in 1998. Jerry discovered that some of his superiors were involved in falsifying documents and covering up a murder investigation they were working on. Feeling unable to stay silent, Jerry exposed the scandal, which quickly gained widespread attention. The employees involved in the illegal activity were fired, but Jerry was also punished. He was demoted, ostracized by his colleagues. Eventually, he was dismissed under false pretenses, though it was clear that the real reason was his whistleblowing on the corruption. This situation took a toll on Jerry's mental health. He loved his job but lost it, simply for choosing to act with integrity. The sense of injustice kept him awake at night, and things only got worse when his wife decided to leave him, taking the children with her. Jerry fell into depression. He began struggling with prescription drugs and alcohol addiction. Despite his mental health issues, he needed to make a living, so he took a job as a security guard in a casino. Later, he moved to Reno, Nevada, where he found similar work, but the late-night lifestyle didn't help him overcome his addictions. Then, hope appeared on the horizon. Through an online chat, Jerry met 26-year-old Cher, although he didn't initially know her real name, used several pseudonyms, all of which had sexual undertones. Their conversations quickly became explicit, and Sherry even sent Jerry nude pictures of herself. She also presented herself as a wealthy businesswoman involved in an ongoing lawsuit that would soon settle, resulting in a substantial sum of money for her. This vision seemed very attractive to Jerry, who had been struggling financially for a long time. However, everything Cher told him was a lie. She was neither wealthy nor independent. They chatted every day until they finally arranged to meet. Sherry visited Jerry in Nevada, telling her husband that she was going on a business trip for Mary Kay. The meeting went exceptionally well, with the couple looking like love-struck teenagers. They talked about the future and even went to look at a few properties for sale, planning to start a life together. The only obstacle to their beautiful plans was Bruce. Sherry told her lover that her husband was abusive, even sending him pictures of bruises she claimed were caused by Bruce. She even said that Bruce was involved in the mafia and that she couldn't leave him for fear of her life. It wasn't until many months later that it was revealed the supposed injuries had likely been made with makeup. However, at the time, Jerry believed everything Sherry told him. He was blinded by his feelings for her and didn't even consider the possibility that she might not be truthful or that she might be manipulating him. Sherry soon progressed to the next, even more cruel phase of her plan. She told Jerry that she was pregnant with his child and sent him ultrasound pictures. Although the images showed a baby, they had actually been taken years earlier, when she was genuinely pregnant. Sherry had lied about her pregnancy twice, but she didn't stop there. She sent Jerry pictures of her supposedly growing belly, claiming she was expecting twins. When it became impossible to maintain the deception, she told Jerry that she had lost the babies, after Bruce had kicked her in the stomach. As you can imagine, this sent Jerry into a rage. Not only had someone harmed the woman he loved, but now they had caused him to lose his children. It is said that Sherry manipulated Jerry twice, both times claiming to be pregnant and suffering a miscarriage. She manipulated him expertly, ensuring that he followed her every command. In the end, the desire for revenge grew in Jerry. Well, on February 11th, 2000, Jerry was found dead in his apartment in Odessa. The 39-year-old was sitting in an easy chair, with a Bible in his lap, having suffered a self-inflicted gunshot wound from a .22 caliber rifle. He was found by a family member who had decided to check on him after receiving no news for so long. Jerry's brother, Mike, later found a briefcase with 4 notes. 3 of them were addressed to different family members, while the 4th instructed him to open the briefcase only in the presence of an attorney. Mike remembered his brother telling him about leaving town in November. According to Mike, if Jerry didn't come back, he had asked his brother to look for a briefcase under his bed. Its contents turned out to be linked to a murder case that had taken place over 750 miles away. There was an unexpected breakthrough in the case of Bruce Miller's murder. The police received a call from a lawyer who had come into possession of evidence left by Jerry. In his farewell letter, Jerry had asked his lawyer to hand over the briefcase from under his bed to the police. As it turned out, it contained numerous incriminating pieces of evidence, including printed messages between him and Sherry, as well as a computer hard drive. One of the discovered messages revealed Sherry telling Jerry to simply do it and run, along with directions to a scrapyard owned by Bruce. Inside the briefcase, there was also a letter to his son, his ex-wife, and his parents. In the last letter, he described in detail what he had done and why. He confessed to the murder, saying the guilt had become unbearable. He even disclosed that after committing the murder, he had called Sherry using Bruce's phone. using a prearranged signal to let her know that he had done what they had planned. From what could be established, shortly after this tragedy, Sherry severed ties with Jerry and found another partner. This likely deepened his depression and may have driven him to take his own life. But before doing so, he ensured that the crime would not go unpunished. After thoroughly searching the deceased's apartment, 2 VHS tapes were found in a bin. They served as irrefutable evidence that Jerry and Sherry knew each other and had an intimate relationship. The relationship, along with the contents of the briefcase, was enough evidence to arrest her on suspicion of complicity in her husband's murder. During her interrogation, Sherry initially denied everything, claiming she didn't know Jerry. However, when she realized the strength of the evidence against her, she gradually changed her story and eventually admitted to the affair. She did not completely abandon the defense of denying everything. She claimed, among other things, that the conversations between her and her lover were fabricated and that they never discussed her husband, let alone conspired to murder him. According to the investigators, had Sherry not behaved in such a cruel and selfish manner, the crime would likely have gone unnoticed. She had an ironclad alibi, and the murderer lived hundreds of miles away from the crime scene, leaving no evidence that could link him to the investigators. If she had not severed contact with him so heartlessly and treated him unjustly, he most likely would never have handed over the evidence to the police that implicated her. Due to the incredible circumstances of the case, it quickly became a media sensation, partly because it was the first known case of the internet being used to incite and plan a murder. Interestingly, most people working on the case at the time had never used a computer, let alone in such an advanced way, to utilize the data within it to conduct a criminal case. Because the perpetrator was dead and could not testify, the use of new technology became unavoidable. It was necessary to determine whether the chat records between the accused and her lover had been fabricated, as Sherry claimed, or whether they were indeed genuine. The preparations for the trial took several months, even enlisting the help of AOL's browser owner. It's worth noting that, while internet activity evidence is now commonly accepted, at the time, there was uncertainty over whether Sherry could be convicted solely on its basis, especially given that there was no physical evidence connecting her to the crime scene. In December 2000, Sherry Miller stood trial. It was known that she began actively planning her husband's murder just a few months after their wedding, and the idea likely formed much earlier. One could speculate that she never loved her husband, and the prosecution believed that the motive was financial, specifically his Social Security payout and life insurance. At that point, Sherry maintained her innocence. She attempted to portray herself as a victim, claiming that when she tried to end her affair with Jerry, he became aggressive, which led him to frame her, to punish her for rejecting him. During the trial, against her lawyer's advice, she decided to testify in her defense. When asked whether the evidence against her was true, she replied affirmatively. It was clear that, despite everything, she was convinced the jury would be on her side. She was wrong. Up until that point, Sherry had frequently used her charm to manipulate others. But this time, her luck ran out. She had succeeded in her murderous plan, but fortunately, it didn't go unnoticed. After 2 days of deliberation, on December 22nd, the jury found Sherry Miller guilty on all charges. On January 29, 2001, Genesee County Circuit Court Judge Judith Fenton sentenced Miller to life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder and 54 to 81 years for second-degree murder. In 2005, Sherry became the subject of an episode of the American true crime show Snapped, which covers high-profile and unusual cases involving women accused of murder. The episode was watched by Michael Diener, and the murderer caught his attention. He decided to contact her, and eventually they became a couple. In an interview, Michael said he had been a fan of the show for a long time. But as soon as he saw Sherry on screen, he immediately saw something special in her. Her voice, her gaze captivated him. She seemed sad and lonely, so he decided to reach out to her. For a while they corresponded, until they officially became a couple, and even got engaged. But the bliss didn't last long. Sherry hadn't changed at all. She was incapable of genuine emotion. She could only manipulate, and she remained in romantic relationships only as long as they benefited her. In July 2009, Doubts were raised about the legality of the trial and the verdict. It was questioned whether evidence related to Jerry's suicide should have been presented during the trial and whether it had unduly influenced the jury's opinion. The decision was made to plan a retrial. And in the meantime, Sherry was released from prison. As soon as she regained her freedom, she immediately broke off her engagement with Michael, treating him just as callously as her previous partners. Except this time, he managed to escape with his life. Michael realized that he had never truly been important to her. She discarded him, almost like trash, as soon as he stopped being useful. It seemed that other people in her life were merely secondary characters, who existed only to make her life. In an interview, he admitted that, at first, he truly believed their love was real, and that Sherry had been wrongly convicted. But after how she treated him, he understood that the verdict had not been unjust. Ultimately, the decision to retry the case was revoked, and Sherry Miller returned to prison to serve the remainder of her sentence. Soon after, she finally admitted to her guilt. In a letter to the judge, she wrote that she wanted Jerry to murder her husband, and, as had been suspected, the motive was money. She feared that if her husband found out about the affair, he would divorce her, and she would be left with nothing. That she could not allow. So she decided to eliminate her husband and take his wealth at the same time. Miller is currently serving out her sentence at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Escalante, Michigan. In the end, Sherry Miller was convicted for the brutal murder of her husband, Bruce. She had manipulated her lover, Jerry Cassaday, into carrying out the crime. Her actions devastated not only Bruce's family, but also her own children, who were left to cope with the aftermath. Despite her conviction, the damage to her family was irreversible. Sherry's children were raised by their maternal grandmother, far from the turmoil of their mother's crime. The story serves as a stark reminder of how deception and manipulation can destroy lives, leaving a trail of heartbreak in their wake. Bruce Miller's life was tragically cut short, leaving behind a legacy of loss and sorrow. His family and friends remember him as a hardworking man with a kind heart, taken too soon by the manipulation of those he trusted. Rest in peace, Bruce.
This was today's true story. Our aim is for people to learn from such incidents and strive to improve society. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.